So again, today we're talking about office drama and what causes it. I'm Cindy Davidson. I'm Director of Business Solutions at Corexcel, and I'm here with my partner, Andrea Vai. She manages our webinar series. We're going to introduce you to concepts today that's going to help you begin the journey of preventing destructive conflict, because not all conflict is bad. We know from other work on building teams that healthy conflict is very important to team success. So we're going to talk about the destructive conflict that causes the office drama and how a model called the cognitive behavior model can help you and your team gain self-awareness, emotional intelligence, big buzzword today, around conflict, and again, how that affects office drama, and using the Everything Disproductive Conflict program and how with these concepts can help you transform those uncomfortable encounters that cause drama into stronger relationships instead. We've all had disagreements or been involved in issues, right, that don't go away. They just kind of lay there beneath the surface. And at these times, we do things that we're not proud of. It's this type of conflict that we're talking about today, because that's what inhibits constructive, positive conversations and again creates drama and really stops a team. I've heard it called noise, from taking the best approaches to challenges, picking the best solutions to problems. So rarely, again, when we talk about conflict, is it a shouting match. Sometimes some workplaces experience that or experiencing outbursts, but more commonly, it's the pictures you see here, right? People are rolling their eyes, feelings are held privately and are getting in the way. So again, they cause that negativity and create drama and take up valuable management time. And just how much time, according to a Washington Business Journal, this is astounding to me, 25 to 40% of a manager's time dealing with these types of issues. So it sounds like figuring out how to prevent this is a profitable effort. Just give me a hand raise. Is this making sense to you? You agree? All right, thanks for that. I know you're paying attention now. So conflict can be good. Again, good conflict fosters respectful debate, and it yields solutions usually that we don't think of first time around, because everybody thinks they have the right idea the first time they speak, and until they hear some other opinions. Bad conflict, though, occurs when people can't get past their differences, and we're here to tell you that it's not the disparate opinions, it's not the differences of opinions that are the root. Typically, more destruction comes from something deeper. And that points to the fact that we interact with our world through our representation of it. And the problem is our immediate representation is sometimes negative, because that's human nature. Most times it's negative. And too often it's inaccurate, or our reasoning in that immediacy is inadequate. So these representations, though, then drive our emotions and behavior. And think about it. Isn't it interesting? Two people can hear the same message and come away with two completely different feelings. I know you've all had that experience. A simple example from childhood. You've heard it before. Two children in front of the wave, they both react to the same wave in a very different way. One jumps in, unafraid, goes for it. Another, very afraid, runs back out to the family on the beach. So we'd like to think of conflict, really simplified, is a bad feeling, because again, conflict isn't normally in the workplace, that fighting. It's as simple as a bad feeling. Somebody says something or does something, or somebody dresses a certain way, they have a tone of voice, they differ from you in the amount of personal space they allow. Some people are 10 minutes always early. Some people are 5 minutes always late. Boy, when things aren't quite the way we see them, we set ourselves up for conflict when we don't recognize that, wow, that's what causes, something's causing a bad feeling, and why? What is it about that? So just take a moment and think about the last time you had a bad feeling, and again, consider that conflict. Who was involved? What was going on? So think about, where was that coming from? And what we're going to talk about is, how do you change your thinking about that? Therefore, your feelings, which is going to lead right into how you behave, how you react. So again, it's about controlling what we do with the feelings. It's not ignoring them. It's not saying they're terrible. They're natural. They're going to happen. But the point is, if we don't check them, they'll have a long-term detrimental effect, because again, remember, most of them that are coming in like this are negative. And neuroscience tells us that every time an individual thinks the same type of thought, and again, here we're talking about a bad feeling, which leads to a negative thought, the little connections through our neurotransmitters become more durable. It's like an electrical line. It becomes stronger and stronger and easier to reactivate. So the more and longer you allow them, the easier it is to think that way, to think negative. By the same token, on the other side, the more you think positive, the easier that becomes as well. So what we're saying is that managing conflict is all about our self-talk. What do we tell ourselves? What do we share with others? Perhaps the most important principle to keep in mind is that we as lovely human beings, right, have the unique capacity and ability to think and reason. We don't always do it well, but we do have the ability. So again, what do we do when we have a bad feeling in reaction to something we don't like? Usually, that's exactly what we do back. We react. But what we want to ask ourselves is, can we pause? Can we check our logic, challenge our thinking, look at a situation in a different way, instead of immediately assigning a motive, whether true or not, and many times not true, to the other person with whom we're disagreeing, or again, simply interacting and having a bad feeling about, and then continuing down that path of negativity. And the interesting thing is, even though it's natural, for some reason we don't expect things to cause bad feelings or disagreement or conflict. The thoughts surprise us, and probably because they're unconscious, they're hidden. And psychologists call them automatic thoughts. So the idea, just follow this little arrow here. I have an automatic thought. I run into a situation that makes me feel badly, conflict. I have an automatic thought, and it has the possibility of triggering, because things are happening so quickly, a destructive reaction. And boy, can those destructive responses really cause relationship problems. They can really take you back a long, long time in building trust with that individual who you're having that difference of thinking. So what we're introducing here is a model called the cognitive behavior model. It's really the foundation of this thought process and what is behind the Everything Disproductive Conflict Assessment and Program. The way the assessment works is, it's a DISC-based program that takes a participant 20 minutes to complete, and the results a 22-page report. As in all the DISC assessments, it is specific to a participant's responses. So not everybody in the D quadrant gets the same report, for example. It's all based on your dot location. And here we'll introduce it just very quickly, how DISC style does have a relationship to how we respond in conflict. So you'll see tendencies, they're going to come up in little bubbles. you'll see tendencies. And those of you who are very familiar with DISC, these will resonate fairly well. If you have maybe familiarity with another type of personality assessment, I think you'll get things. If you look at those words around the DISC circumference, they'll make a lot of sense to you. So again, in the DISC world, the destructive response, the destructive tendency, not necessarily response, it'll turn into a response, but the tendency for a D is to perhaps be looked at as insensitivity, being insensitive. But they're strong, they're easy, and positive part to conflict is that they're very straightforward. If you live in the I quadrant, your destructive tendency is that emotional part, but the more positive is the empathetic. The S quadrant may have a tendency, again, the destructive response is to withdraw, but the positive is the caring about other people's feelings. And then in the C quadrant, that overly critical is the destructive, but the positive in, again, dealing with conflict is sorting out the issue. So the idea is learning to avoid those behaviors, that those tendencies, those behaviors that are going to be destructive to us, not going to be helpful, and lean into the ones that are going to be helpful. And so some examples of thoughts that would follow that. So maybe the D's response, again, when they are leaning toward the destructive is, gosh, a D's negative automatic thought is, you're not in charge of me. How about the I? Here we go again. Another great idea squashed because they're all enthusiastic. An S, I'm just not even going to participate because I'm not thinking that anyone's interested in my opinion in this case. And how about the C? Another unrealistic proposal. They're the ones that perhaps the eyes are looking at that are squashing things down. So anyone on the line that knows their style, can anyone relate? Anyone want to raise a hand? Use Q&A to have a comment. Anybody have any questions so far? What we do is we do record this webinar, but we don't provide the slide deck or the notes. If you would like help on perhaps running or facilitating a workshop around this, I can certainly help you do that. So first step, this sounds very simple, and the model itself is simple, but the steps and getting it put all together can take some energy. First step, recognizing when we're having those automatic thoughts. And again, the assessment will help you do that. So many times these thoughts they're negative, they're assumption-based, we're assuming something, not fact-based. They're not meeting our need, and that's why they're so negative. We're not on the same page as me. They're emotional, and they're generally critical. So we want to really understand, how can we first step back, take time to reflect on these things, and ask ourselves, is the thought I'm having true? Is it valid? And could I be overreacting, exaggerating? Is there another way to look at this? How should I respond if my goal is to have a more productive interaction? And it's not easy because, again, our human nature is we're reacting, and we've done this for a long time. So habits are formed, and it really takes time to practice. Think about strategies. How can you most comfortably step back, especially in a very busy work environment? You're going to have to find what works for you. So I've seen some people take a quiet, deep breath. Maybe they look down. Some people smile and collect their thoughts. I've seen people do that. I have had success asking questions back to make sure I understand what's going on, but also buys me time. And for some individuals, if it's especially a situation where you're feeling particularly emotional about something, maybe it's just time to say, you know what, I've got 2 other things on my mind from today that I've got to pay attention to. Can we revisit this in an hour? Can I come back to this? And find, again, whatever's comfortable for you to buy yourself time to respond in the best way. I do hear occasionally some people say, you know what, if I change my response, that means I'm not being honest. This is just the way I am. And, I think everybody should know that. Well, guess what? Our first response is not always our most honest response. And what you're doing, of course, when you're stepping back is you're challenging your thoughts, because that's what we control. Our thoughts, if we control them, then control how we feel, how we interact, and then how we behave. So again, can't control other people, but perhaps by controlling our own responses will affect then the other response we get back from others. So I'll just show you a quick video. This will put it all together for you and illustrate just what we mean.
This is DISC, a simple tool to help you understand yourself and others. It describes 4 basic styles: D, dominance; I, influence; S, steadiness; and C, conscientiousness. Each of these styles experiences and processes conflict differently. Here's how it works. First, everyone has a dot. That dot tells you your DISC style. And these words around the circle, they're called priorities. Together, they tell your story in conflict. For instance, people with the D style are direct and tough-minded. They have a strong need to shape their environment. So in conflict, they often take control, overshadowing others. Because they're assertive, they speak up about problems and stick up for themselves. And they can sometimes be forceful, justifying their side of the story when they're convinced they're right. People with the I style tend to be lively and enthusiastic. In conflict, they openly express their frustration or hurt, often needing to release what's building inside. And they assert themselves, hoping that they'll be acknowledged and heard, although sometimes this overwhelms others instead. And because they want reassurance, they may revisit the conversation until they feel the relationship is okay. Those with the S style are generally patient and even-tempered. Since they care so much about harmony, they're often quick to compromise or accommodate others in conflict. They worry about possible damage to the relationship, and so they'll look for ways to reassure the other person, hoping for the same in return. And they also want stability, so they often project calm and appear to agree on the surface, even if resentment is simmering underneath. And finally, the C style tends to be analytical and private. Because they prize objectivity, they rely on facts during a conflict and may dismiss more emotional points of view that make them uncomfortable. When emotions do start to rise, even just a little, it can threaten the stability they crave. And rather than provoke an outburst, they may withdraw or just stay quiet. They work to frame any disagreement rationally, creating intricate, logical justifications for their position. Now, in the real world, of course, your dot can be between 2 styles, such as in the area between I and S. And you can have 4 or even 5 priorities. For example, in addition to reassurance, expression, and harmony, You might also share the priority of objectivity with your C coworkers. Ultimately, DISC is not only a way for you to understand yourself better, but also a tool to appreciate different approaches to conflict. Compared to you, the situations that stress other people out might be completely different. But when you start to understand the different needs and motivations behind each DISC style, that's when conflict starts to shift from being a headache to actually being productive.
So this really complements the Everything DISC workplace and the other assessments that are available through Everything DISC. It takes a deeper dive into conflict. It is addressed in the profiles, like the workplace and the management profile. The stressors are addressed there, and how we react in conflict. But what this does, it takes it a step further and really takes, as I said, a deep dive into it. So here is an introduction of the thought of the cognitive behavioral model. And this is my style. Here's something I've had to get over. So conflict situation is, I think we should go left. Somebody says to me, I think we should go left instead of right. And I thought we were already going to go right, right? So the tendency in my style, the reaction is, why can't they get it? I'm right about this. And it makes me feel that maybe they don't trust me. Maybe, in my anxiety, they don't think I'm smart. They don't think I have the right answer. So, gosh, is that really what's going on here, or is something else happening? So instead of having that feeling of anxiety and that I've got to overpower and kind of convince everybody, get more facts in line and convince everybody of my side, what about that, hey, maybe I'm not, maybe we're both right. So it's just reframing that this has nothing to do with people trusting me. That's totally made up in my mind. This has nothing to do with them thinking I'm not smart. Again, it's recognizing those and then having more logical thoughts. So again, pattern is conflict, automatic thought, triggers a destructive reaction, but I can change it and I can choose to step back and have a better response versus that initial reaction. Just a quick review on, since DISC is informing our styles, certainly we all have destructive possibilities, but if we can lean into the ones that are positive, productive, and easy, also easy for us, they should be just as easy as those destructive responses, then we're taking a step in the right direction of having more positive interactions. I'll show you what the assessment looks like. This is just page 7. Of course, it comes with a very detailed narrative based on your unique DISC style. You can see this individual has a strong D style. Their dot is on the outside of this circumference. So the assessment first talks about you, what drives each different style based on your style compared with your unique style. This is starting out with, okay, how does this style interact with the I in conflict? So first of all, understanding each style, it goes through D, I, S, and C. What drives them, you can see here in the I style, what drives this individual is being able to express their thoughts. What will they want? Reassurance. What's like you, that they'll want to assert opinions. So it gets in then to more detailed bullet points about compared to you. What does that mean? So they're more likely, however, to verbalize feelings and emotions. Even though you'll both be verbal, they'll verbalize feelings and emotions. And getting down to then, how can you have more productive conflict? This is the bottom line of all of the Everything DISC assessments, the 3 bullet points. So here, it's telling this strong D style, approach this I style more informally and keep the dialogue light. Wow, that's so completely opposite, right, of what a person in a strong D style would do. They would want to be very direct, and formal and not light at all, but be very serious. Let them verbalize their thoughts and feelings. Wow. What would a person in a strong D style have a tendency to do? Probably, hey, let's move on, let's shut this down. And not focusing on the goal. D, of course, wants to focus on the goal. So it's really, really getting very good pointers on, gee, what do I need to change to make this work better? So again, just quickly walking through each style. These are examples of the conflict situation coming up for each particular style. What's likely that an I style is going to think, taking it personally, they don't care about me or my ideas. Is that really what's happening? Are they really being personally attacked? Of course not. It's, gee, there's something else going on. So what can this person tell themselves that will create in them a more productive response? Same for S. I know we agreed to go left, but we've decided to go right. S doesn't want to fight, right? Gosh, I'm not happy about this. But how about more, I'm not happy, but I need to better understand. So maybe I'm going to question so I can regroup. It's reframing again the thoughts and feelings. For a C, automatically, gosh, I've done all the research. They're just not smart, right? They're not seeing my point of view. Maybe get angry, maybe withdraw. But again, stepping back to reframe, hey, what's the other thought that can make for more productive conversation? So none of these reactions we just reviewed are unusual. I'm going to give you now just a sample from the assessment program, from the facilitation kit, what the example might look like in terms of an automatic thought in a communication.
Actually, Dante, do you have a minute?
Wonder what this is about. Yeah.
You got that report for me?
He seems frustrated. I was planning on getting it to you by the end of today.
Oh, yeah. Well, where are you at on it?
He thinks I'm not going to come through. I just said I'd get it done today.
Oh, yeah. Well, what I mean is, do you have the middle section done yet? I want to double check the numbers.
He thinks I'm going to screw this up. The numbers are fine.
See, the nice thing about these videos is that they are, they go through in the facilitation materials several videos that show several examples so that you can really see perhaps what's going on with different styles. So let's take a look at this. He came into a conflict situation. Do you have the report? All of a sudden, I mean, is any of this true? He seems frustrated. He thinks I'm not going to come through. He thinks I'm going to screw this up. He's assigning all these things to his coworker. That's his mind. That's not his coworker's mind. So what about changing all that? And, instead of, he sort of withdrew there. He was a little bit touchy. What about just responding? Gosh, did the deadline change? I'm working on it now. I plan to have it to you this afternoon. Maybe the response to the middle section is, I can probably get you that if you need it earlier. What's going on here? Are you concerned that the numbers aren't going to match your analysis? So it's a conversation. It's not about, I'm automatically assigning all these things that are driving my behavior. It's really stepping back and, again, creating different dialogue. So take a look at this list of destructive conflict responses. You can probably identify some of them, again, from the video. You can start assigning. But these come, again, right from the assessment and right from the program. And one of the exercises that we ask participants to go through is take a few moments and identify what behaviors bother you most. So the things that really bother me most are that passive aggressive, that withdrawing, that the kind of behavior we saw in the video. Those are the kinds of things that most, are most uncomfortable for me. What I do that is not good, which we also ask you to identify, and again, we ask you to take a look at your assessment, and I'll show you a page from it next to kind of remind you, and maybe you add some things to it, but I know that I can cave in, I can become hypercritical, and I can overpower. So those are things that I can do that I certainly don't like about myself. And so here's the D style and the automatic thoughts. And again, this would be outlined in your assessment as to what are your likely automatic thoughts, which ones can you check off and say, oh yeah, these are absolutely right, and maybe I add a couple more to them. But, it makes it easier for you as you are going through your communication to then identify them. So they're in the back of your mind now, and when you identify them, it's like that smile that comes across your face. You may have seen it with others, but really it helps you outline your tendencies when they appear. So when they appear again, it's about taking the step of stepping back, and it's difficult. It takes time and energy because you are challenging your thoughts. And you have to remember that they may be disordered. So you've got to ask yourself those questions. They've taken your life. These habits have taken your life to become ingrained. So it's going to take time to shed. And again, that's the value of an assessment that gives you the detail as to how to do that, but also consider what you would do with the assessment results in terms of the conversations you would have, perhaps a meeting or a workshop with your team. It really, really goes on to explain how you can do that. The program does address that many emotions at play fall into two broad categories, anger and anxiety. So you can see what that looks like. Again, a sample page from the profile will talk with you about what do those two responses mean, how does your style interact with those two responses? So anger, I shouldn't have to let this go. The other person should, in a strong D style. How about the anxiety? And us making up these words that, gosh, this is an awful situation. Is it really that awful? And again, choosing the productive responses. So it's going through your assessment and looking at the responses it's suggesting and saying, which ones can I really incorporate? Because let's face it, we can't work on everything at the same time. So what are the priorities? For me, I know that, gosh, apologizing is easy, seeking active resolution, slam dunk. What I really need to spend energy on, and the top two for me, because they are going to, they get me to the greatest, how do I want to say it? They give me the greatest bang for my buck is listening better, really, and giving people time and space. And they happen to be challenging for me. So again, but big investment, but big reward. What I suggest is if this is resonating with you for the next week, you try to write down as many situations you can as they happen. So you come into a conflict, you're not feeling good, you've got a thought, try to think about what those are, try to kind of make a little notebook of them and see if you're able to concentrate on reframing them before you respond. And, do you see patterns? Can you pick those one or two things out that you'll be able to do? And think about your style and how that's impacting you. And again, the style of the other person, if you've identified a trend with a particular individual. So in managing disagreements, we've said it's not always a disagreement. It can be a bad feeling. But think about, again, get back to that idea of thinking about questions that you can ask a particular style and what question might best resonate with each style. So, the D style being very direct, a very direct question would work with them. How did you get to this? How did you get here? And is it cast in stone? What is the bottom line? How about an I? They'll respond best to different words. Hey, I'm interested. How did you come to that conclusion? Can we have a conversation about that? And what about the S? Hey, I'm sure you've thought about how this idea, this direction might affect others. Can we talk about that? And the C will definitely respond to something like, hey, what am I missing? Because they will definitely tell you what you are missing. And again, think about questions you should be asking yourself, asking others, but really consider setting aside time to invest in talking about how you handle conflict in your team or in your organization. It's really valuable. Several years ago, comparison reports were made available in the Everything Disc family, and that means that there is the ability for us to run, or for you to run if you have an Epic account, comparisons between any two individuals who have taken an Everything Disc profile. So the same does exist for the conflict profile as well. It does provide each participant 10 additional pages of information. So it goes through, what is each participant's preferences, what do they focus on, but also then goes through 6 behavior scales, and talks to each individual about, how they can best work together. So for example, there's a scale of very daring on one side and very careful on the other. Where are the two individuals? What roadblocks will they experience in that situation? And what benefits can each encounter there? And what do they do about it? And then the comparisons were really came to life through an online portal called My Everything Disc that was developed virtually. So again, just all a part of the program. Going beyond the assessment, just a couple additional tips. Destructive conflict is going to happen. We can't completely stop it. We can get to a better place. But we can also begin behaving in ways that help send a message through our organization. So identifying those patterns of thoughts, we've talked about that, so that you can get the most out of your efforts. How about just encouraging others to scan for 3 daily positives? Just get out of that negativity thinking. Reducing your own stress and helping others. Sometimes it's just taking the straw off of a coworker's back or somebody who works with you on a team. And then again, it's challenging others. If you have a conversation, if you really talk through, hey, how does our team want to handle these things? How do we want to talk about conflict on our team? And you can get to a place where you can all agree that, hey, we're going to help each other. We're going to challenge each other when we see something destructive going on. That can be extremely helpful. And if you certainly are leading a team, it is a great way for you, I think, to build your team and to build credibility when you see problems happening. So you can privately talk with somebody about, gosh, I noticed this interaction going on didn't look so good. What was going on? What were you thinking, feeling? And really, again, challenging others, thinking about, well, this, that, the other thing. Really, is that true? What else can be true? How about, can you think about something else that might be more productive? Let me know how I can help. So if you're excited about this, we're certainly excited about it. Here's how you can experience it. We are going to plan something a little bit different next month. We're going to actually plan for a virtual Everything Disc Productive Conflict Workshop, a virtual one, for an hour, and questions after that, Wednesday, November 7th. So if you want to participate with us, what will happen is you will order an Everything Disc Productive Conflict Assessment package with a 1-hour webinar debrief. So we're going to send an email out, and if you would like to participate, there'll be a special offer there for you to do so, and it'll be really great. You'll go through the assessment process, you'll get your results. We will talk about them as a team in a virtual workshop here online, and I'll be using the Productive Conflict Facilitation Kit materials, so you'll get a really rich experience. So thanks again for your time and attention. I always appreciate feedback. You can use the Q&A feature to do that. You can send me a private email. And again, really hope that you decide to join us in this endeavor and in our virtual workshop next month. So otherwise, we will see you on a next webinar. Thanks again.